Dropbox. I usually try to remember to expand the Dropbox size. This being a multimedia class, typically files for this class are bigger than files in other classes, but I don't always remember to do that. So if you do get an error saying it's too big to go to Dropbox, email it to me, just mzellers@loraineccc.edu, and then put a note in the Dropbox saying that you emailed it to me. All right. Last thing I want to cover today is to make symbols more complicated. All right? Let's go back to the animation that we talked about way at the beginning when we were just talking about storyboards and that. We were talking about a little earthworm going across a screen. So let's go and let's attempt to do that animation in Flash. All right, I'm going to go and I'll make the background green. I'll add a blue sky. I know, not from around here, am I? And I'll make that my background. And again, I'll go in and change the name of the layer to background. Little things like this can help so much when you're going back later and making changes to it. It can save you so much time in trying to figure out, is my background layer 63 or layer 68? I don't remember. Well, if you call it background, then it's obvious. Now, so far, I might have done something like this. If I wanted to make a worm go across the screen, I might have gone in and let's insert a new layer. Oops. Insert layer. And I'm going to draw an earthworm. If you weren't sure before why I chose to animate an earthworm, it will become very obvious now why I chose to do it. Let me draw my earthworm. All right. Now, let's make him go across the screen. How can we make him go across the screen? Well, we could manually draw it, but that seems like a lot of work. What I could do is I could go, grab the earthworm, convert it to a symbol, call it worm, again, be descriptive, and then I can choose to create a motion tween. All right? That'll give me, by default, 24 frames, and I could add frames or get rid of frames or whatever. Remember, I want to go in and I want to even out the number of frames so that my background is there the whole time. So I'll go and insert a frame there. All right, he's a little it's flying in through the air. Let's put him down on the ground. And now I could go into this frame and create a tween, and my worm goes across the page. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, yeah, nothing. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess we're done then. We'll see you next week. Now, what's bad about this is worms actually don't move, don't slide across the grass. All right. If I was going to do an inchworm, I was saying earthworm, but I meant inchworm. How does it go again? It moves its body like this. Ooh, shadow. Oh, all right. What if it was a bird? No. But the earthworm moves its body sort of like this. So the worm itself has a little animation to it, right? The worm itself has an animation to it. And if you notice something, notice this. When I click on the worm, notice it says that it's a movie clip, that symbol that I created. In other words, that worm itself can be a little mini animation. All right? I can put in the different movements that I want the worm to do, and then the worm won't just slide across the grass, but the worm will move its wormy way across the grass. So let's go and do that. All right. Now I've already created this symbol. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. One is building off of what we have here. The other way is how I could have done it from scratch if I wanted to. I'm going to go and double click on this and watch real closely what it says up here. As I double click on that, notice it now says Scene 1 Worm. All right? I'm no longer on the main timeline for the movie. I'm on the worm's timeline. And if I notice, there's only one frame on the worm's timeline, right? Why? Well, because that's all I drew, was one frame. What I can do is I can go in and insert a keyframe if I want. And I can go and I can change the way the worm looks. For example, I can go in and erase a little bit of the worm. Let's try that again. All right. Now look what the worm does. The worm goes back and forth, up and down. Now, depending on how good I want this to be, I could actually add more. Let's go and do one more. Insert a keyframe. And I'm going to go, actually going to erase this. And I'm going to make it this. All right. So now I have a symbol of a worm, and for good measure I'm going to add in an extra frame here. It's just a plain old frame, just so that the worm's in that position each way. Now I can go back to my scene, all right, and when I do the tween, that little mini animation is going to be running as that worm symbol goes across the screen. So, if I go under Control Test, the worm goes across the screen, and as it's going, it's doing its little worm movements. All right? Okay. The point of this is that each of these symbols is itself a little animation that you can go and you can put. Now, how good do you need to make it? Well, however good you need to make it, right? It depends on what you're doing. If I'm just doing something silly, and just want to show, a cartoony looking worm going across the screen, yeah, it doesn't have to be that great. If I was in a biology department somewhere and I wanted to show my students how a worm actually moved, I'd want to do better than what I've done here. Yes?
What would be the best way to move that layer to, that whole shape tween or whatever, and say move it from 1 to 25 to 40 to 65? Say you want the worm to move somewhere else.
You can always go in and insert frames. Oops.
Well, I want the other one like that. So I told you to move it just from that spot, move it down the line of movies.
Oh, you can drag the whole thing over like that, and that would do it. Okay, so all I did is I selected all the frames and clicked on them and drug them.
Yeah, I tried that, but it basically would stay and add on to it.
Well, it could be that you only had some of the frames selected in that tween. We can take a look at that in lab. Let's go and put them back to where he was. Okay, now I'm going to go and I'm going to create a bird, and I'm going to do a similar thing with this and have the bird flat. Before I do that, of course, keep in mind that we can add more worms to this if we want to. I'll insert a layer. I'll go to the library, and again, I can. There was a play thing for this. I can go and I can drag. I'm not on the right layer. That's why I always do this. I can drag another worm over. I can select it, create motion tween. We'll make this a slower worm. We can even go in and we can make it the smaller worm by changing the width and the height of it. So we can make this maybe half as big. And then when we go and test it, we'll see the big worm going faster than the little worm. We can add as many of these as we wanted to. If we wanted to have a little bit of variety of it, you know, maybe make the worm act a little different, we could go in and maybe create a second worm that was similar just to give a little variety so not all the worms were moving in sync. Yes?
Did you make the, were there 5 frames total? Like the one flat, the one halfway up, and the one all the way up and then back down again?
I didn't do it back down again.
You didn't do back down?
Yeah, I didn't do it. I actually thought of that as I was saving it, but if I really wanted to make the animation good, I'd probably have worm in position 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. All right, and then it would look a little better. The way I have it is in 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so it looks a little awkward. Yes?
Can you do that when you click on scene 1 to get you to that frame?
When I did what?
When you animated it to each frame?
When I created the animation for the worm,
Yes.
I double-clicked on it. All right. The reason I double-clicked on it is because I already had a symbol made. All right. So if you already have a symbol made that you want to animate, you can double-click it and then you can get in and animate it. Another thing you could, yes.
Did you slow it down by just making the tween shorter? Is that what you
Yeah.
did?
In other words, worm 1 starts out here and goes to there. Worm 2 starts out here and only goes to there. So it looks like it's slower. I actually messed up the size of it. I changed the size only in the last frame. I had meant to change the size in the first frame as well. All right. Let's see another way to create a symbol. I can go up and say insert new symbol, and it'll ask me what I want to call it. I can say bird, and then I'm given an empty timeline that I can draw whatever I want to in. So let's go in and let's draw that. Let's go in here and insert a keyframe. Go erase. Now I can go back to scene 1, and my bird is in the library. And I could go in, if I want to animate the bird, I could go into insert a layer. Drag the bird in here. Go into the first frame, right mouse, oops. Select the bird, right mouse, say create motion tween. Alright. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer, so it's not letting me do that. I have to select the layer that I'm on. Then I can go in. Create motion tween, and then I can go here, undo is your friend, and move them there. And if I want to play with the size of the bird, so the bird looks like it's flying away from me. And now when I go and run this, it will go in and be flapping away as those are going on. Now again, I just did a couple of scenes. Again, so, a lot of people express a concern that they're not very artistic, and I could see where my expert artistic work here would have you a little intimidated. All right? But keep in mind, again, we want to just really study the basics of animation and telling a story, and I think, again, I've been doing these drawings in like 2 minutes. If you spend 5 minutes doing them, you could probably make it reasonably good. The other thing that you can do, again, remember, is as your skills in other areas get better, you can, it sort of is a synergy there. So if you start using drawing tools, you can see how to make better drawings, and then you can incorporate those. One thing I would like to show, and we'll probably at some point have an exercise on this, is one thing that is available. If you ever look at, and you're welcome to use in your animation to give it sort of a more professional looking look, is if you look for sprites. Sprites were like the way that a lot of like sort of old school animation was done for video games. In other words, not all this clever, newfangled, looks more human than I do kind of animation, but like the old 2D animations. So if you look here, for example, here's a sprite of someone punching. Is this Scott Pilgrim? It is Scott Pilgrim. Wow, I'm good. Extra credit for anyone that uses Scott Pilgrim, I think. But at any rate, I could go, right, and I could save this image. And what a sprite is again, it's just simple little cartoony drawings indicating some action. Here, they're throwing a punch. If I went, I could go and copy each of these things in and make a Scott Pilgrim figure, all right? And that would make my animation look a little bit better. Now, to do that, you need to know a little bit about photo editing, right? You need to be able to go and crop out just the piece of them that you want, and you have to know how to maybe change the white background color to a transparency, because you don't want the white background to follow, and so on. So all those things we'll talk about when we talk about photo editing and all, or I can talk about in lab if you have questions. But the point is, again, keep in mind for this class, you can use material that you find online, such as this, provided you cite it correctly. Just like you'd use a reference on a term paper or something like that. All right. What we'll do now is I will go unlock the lab for you. I'll come back, grab the videos so I can post them. The remainder of the lecture time, about 10, 15 minutes, you can devote to practicing the stuff that we talked about here. After that is your lab time for you to work on your assignment.